Welcome back to Aunt Lainey's Kitchen, and I'm back to talk to you about localish foodie content creators and some, just a bit of local news going on in the Kansas City area as it pertains to food, just a little bit of that. Um, so what I typically look for in KC foodie content creators, I want to learn from their content. Now, listen, I like being entertained, but I really want to kind of learn about either a new restaurant, maybe like a new concept, something, get like a new point of view. I want to learn from their content. It's very important for me to learn from from their content. I also want to be entertained. I mean, I do like to be entertained. Sometimes I learn from the content and it's such a heavy thing. I'm like, okay, well, I can only like listen to this person like, once a week or maybe once a month, depending on how deep they go into their content. So, sometimes there's people I call them my Sunday morning people. Like, they just brighten up my Sunday morning. So I'm like, oh, I gotta see I gotta catch up with them on Sunday. So I generally don't look at, people's pages or blogs every day. It's just usually like a once a week thing. I'm like, oh, let's catch up with these people, see what's going on. The next thing is their vibe. I want to see what their vibe is like. The vibe is very important to me because, like I said, if it's too heavy, then it's something that I can't always process because I have a lot going on too. So I that's something that I might, read if I'm traveling, like or like if I'm traveling or if I'm kind of at an outdoor cafe and I'm like, oh, I just kind of want to read something, maybe a little bit more serious or something like that, or even the library. If I go to the library and I want to just take like a little break, I might just, page through something that's a little bit more serious. Also, but the most important thing for me is when it comes to KC, foodie content creators, I want to see how they rep Kansas City. Is Kansas City the focal point, or is it more of a general foodie account? Or do they just happen to live in Kansas City? I mean, there's nothing wrong with any of those things, but it just depends on, how they're kind of presenting the information as to, whether or not I'm going to consistently follow them. Because there's a lot of people I follow and I'll check in with them, like I said, once a week. Sometimes it's once a month. Sometimes it's like I'll make a note of, hey, I haven't talked to them, not talk, but I haven't like seen their stuff in a while. So it's more of a quarterly situation. I just do this like catch up kind of thing. And so that's kind of what I look at. So with that in mind, here's who I am following now. And again, the list is always growing. Okay. It's always growing. So for me on like on Instagram, it's where I follow a lot of my food creators. There is a creator called Kansas City Foodie Finds, and it's Benjamin Fuentes, and he's on Instagram, and I like to follow his stuff because he's out and about, and he's very knowledgeable about food. So again, that's important. And then I also follow Chuck Eats KC. Now this is a blog. He's a blogger, and his blog is so extensive. Like he does the openings and closings. He talks about like different restaurants, throughout the city, and he's very knowledgeable as well. And I like his vibe. It's kind of like I'm a regular person who likes food, and so I like that he doesn't talk down to people. He's not super rarefied in how he presents his information. It's straightforward, and that's what I enjoy. And then there's the Casey Foodie blog on Instagram. That's just like a fun one that I like to follow, kind of lighthearted. And then Natalie and Casey on Instagram. I follow her as well. And again, it's like fun to see her adventures in KC. And then there's Eat Food KC on Instagram. And they're very knowledgeable as well. And I love seeing how they rep Kansas City. So yeah, that's kind of like, my content creators there that I like to follow. Now again, there are more, but I didn't want to kind of spend the whole episode, the whole segment, I should say, talking about, just a few because there's so many, and that's what I want to start kind of incorporating, in these episodes. Not maybe everyone, but every couple episodes, I want to talk about some local food creators. Now, speaking of more local news, this is from an article by Joyce Smith on the startlandnews.com website. Chef Jonathan Justice and his wife, Camille Eckloff, they're opening the Parker Hollow, and that's in downtown Parkville, Missouri. And it's, I think, Frank's Italian building. I think Frank retired not too long ago. And so they are going to go there in downtown Parkville. And the menu features like a West Coast sustainable seafood. That's going to be the main focal point of it. And that sounds amazing. You know, he used to have the restaurant in Smithville, and I was so sad that I never got to try it. It was, I believe, so he's the grandson of the Justice um drugstore uh uh um sorry, Justice Drugstore people, and you know, the person that started it. And so yeah, and then he had Justice Drugstore, and it was like a restaurant, and it was super cool, and then they ended up, you know, having to close it. And, you know, I was kind of sad I never got to try it. And then he's been, you know, consulting around, and he consulted at Gizmo's restaurant, and that's in Smithville, and I'm that's on my list to try as well. And so now that this restaurant is opening in Parkville, I'm not sure when it's going to open because, you know, again, restaurants sometimes they open on time and sometimes they're not able to. And that just, you know, anytime you have to deal with a lot of paperwork and hiring people and all that other stuff, you know, things they're just delays sometimes, and that just is what it is. But I'm really excited um to try this. This is just I'm like fangirling right now. And so yeah, that's I think it's going to be great. As someone who used to live on the West Coast, I'm really excited to kind of see, you know, how they pull this off. Now, sadly, closing is the Pathlight Brewing Company. They're closing the weekend of June 20th on their fifth anniversary. So I'm sending them all the well wishes. This is located in Lenexa. And I went there maybe like, was it last year, the year before, when Cousin Maine's, I want to say it was last year, they had like their food truck there. And so, you know, we got a group of friends together. I stood in line for almost 90 minutes. Now, granted, I lived in the Rhode Island, so you know, I'd had, you know, East Coast lobster rolls, like all that stuff. But still, I was feeling sometimes I get a little nostalgic, and so I was like, I'm going to stay in that line, and I did, and you know, the food was pretty good. And but Pathlight Brewing was in their parking lot. So then, you know, we sat there and we ordered drinks from the server at Pathlight. And so it was just really good. And having all the there was just a ton of people out there. Having all those people out there was really fun. I really enjoyed it. And so yeah, I mean, it was just something that I still remember. And again, I'm in the Northland, so getting to Pathlight Brewing was not like an easy undertaking for me all the time, but I'm still sad that they're going to close. And I might be able to kind of swing by there before the closing date. But yeah, it just had such a great neighborhood vibe. And for me, like a neighborhood vibe is everything because it's a place that you want to take people when you're celebrating, when you're mourning, or just like, hey, it's Friday night. What are you guys doing? Let's go meet at Pathlight Brewing, you know, this neighborhood joint. And so I'm very sad. And I know there's a lot of people that live closer to the area that are probably sad as well. So I'm sending them all the well wishes, and hopefully, you know, the people come up with something, you know, come up with something else because they had something, a very special vibe there. Okay, so some more things that I'm actually, you know, contemplating locally is that, you know, a couple of Kansas City podcasts that are food, like there's Hungry for Mo. I don't know if they're going to continue doing that. And then there are a couple other podcasts I was looking up because I'm like, okay, let's find a food podcast, a Kansas City kind of based food podcast. And I'm just not finding them. So if, you know, and I'm like looking around. So if I find out, you know, any more Kansas City, you know, based podcasts, and I know that the KCUR has their food critics come on monthly, which is good, you know, but I'm always looking for something like, you know, on a more regular basis to kind of listen to. And so I will keep on the hunt for a local food podcast because again, I am a local food podcaster, but my podcast is a little different because it's like Aunt Lady's Kitchen. So sometimes I'm going to talk about shepherd's pie, and other times I'm going to get nostalgic, and other times I'm going to review restaurants. There's a lot of stuff I'm going to do. So I am a food podcaster, but I'm not like I'm not one of those like slickered up food podcasts. And I love listening to those though too. They're very organized, they're laid out. I love it. This is like your Aunt Lainey's kitchen where, you know, again, it's comfort, but you know, I don't have like it's comfort, but I get so kind of unfocused sometimes. So it is kind of like being at your auntie's house. Somebody told me listening to my podcast makes them think of being at their auntie's house and how there was great conversations. And then their auntie would just kind of like start talking about random stuff and then come back to I'm like, yes, that is me. I am that auntie. Okay. I make no apologies for that. Okay, coming up next is the last segment of the show, and that's going to be foodie adventures in the Strawberry Hill District in Kansas City, Kansas. Y'all, I was outside. I'll be right back.